I was sitting by the window of my apartment, the city stretching out like a glittering ocean below me, the hum of traffic distant but constant. My silk blouse brushed my arms, soft and warm against the chill of the autumn air drifting through the cracked window. I sipped my coffee slowly, savoring the bitter warmth, feeling the calm I had carved out for myself over the years. Out here, in my own space, I was untouchable, composed, a far cry from the girl who used to hide in corners at home, wishing she could disappear. Then my phone buzzed on the marble countertop, the vibration cutting through my thoughts. I glanced at the screen and froze. A name I hadn't seen in years stared back at me, my mother. And next to it, my sister's number. My heart skipped, then sank, then clenched. The irony wasn't lost on me. After everything, the years of silent bullying, the endless dismissals, the nights I cried myself to sleep while paying my own way through college, the very people who had ignored me, made me feel small, were now reaching out. I stared out at the skyline, hands tightening around my mug. I could almost hear the echo of their words from years ago, sharp as broken glass. You'll never make it. You're too weak. Yet here I was, on the cusp of everything I had dreamed of, and they had no idea. No idea who I had become. I felt a flicker of something I hadn't let myself feel in a long time, anticipation, a little thrill. Because sometimes, the ones who pushed you down are the first to marvel when you rise. I remember the day I decided I couldn't stay home any longer. I was 16, barely taller than the kitchen counter, and my sister, Madison, was towering over me, not just in height but in every cruel word she could find. You're useless, she snapped, flicking a paper across the table like it was poison. Mom and Dad can't even look at you without sighing. Why do you even try? I shrank back into the corner of the living room, clutching the chipped mug my grandmother had given me, the one she always said was lucky if you treat it like your dreams. My parents didn't intervene, they never did. Their silence had become a heavier weight than Madison's insults. Each day was a cycle of me being invisible at the dinner table, my achievements dismissed, my feelings minimized. Every birthday, every little success, met with a cold, "That's nice." I had learned early that in our house, words only mattered if they hurt. That night, I sat on my bed, the glow of my laptop screen reflecting in my tear-streaked eyes. I remembered Grandma's words, soft but insistent. Don't let anyone's cruelty define your worth. When the time comes, take yourself somewhere they can't reach you. Build your world, brick by brick. I clutched that advice like a lifeline, imagining a place where I wasn't small, where my voice wasn't drowned by ridicule. Packing my bag felt like stealing a part of myself, and yet it was the first act of freedom I had ever allowed. I tucked the mug into my suitcase, wrapped in an old sweater, and left a note on my dresser. I'm going to find the life you never believed I could. I walked out that night, the streetlights casting long shadows that felt like the past trailing behind me, fading with every step. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I was going somewhere that finally felt like mine. Leaving wasn't easy, but it was decisive. For the first time, I chose myself over their expectations, over their neglect. And somewhere deep down, I knew that my story had just begun. I landed in New York with nothing but a suitcase, the chipped mug from Grandma, and a fierce determination I didn't know I had. The city was loud, unforgiving, and intoxicating all at once. I rented a tiny studio apartment, the kind with creaky floors and windows that barely shut, but to me, it was paradise. Every night, I traced the skyline with my eyes, imagining a life I hadn't yet earned, but that I would. The first months were brutal. I took every job I could, waitressing, office temp work, freelance writing, anything to pay rent and keep food on the table. Exhaustion became my closest companion, but so did ambition. Then I met Clara, a seasoned editor at a small publishing firm, who saw something in me I didn't yet recognize myself. "You have fire," she said one evening, sipping her lukewarm coffee across from me. "Stop doubting. Invest in yourself, or no one else will." She became my mentor, guiding me through the maze of rejection letters, late nights, and self-doubt. I spent hours after work learning, practicing, rewriting my dreams into something tangible. There were nights I cried in the tiny kitchen of my apartment, my hands shaking, my heart threatening to give up, but the mug from Grandma sat on the counter, reminding me I had promised to build my own world. My first freelance article was accepted. The first client paid me enough to cover rent and some savings. The first time I realized I could survive, truly on my own. Every small win fueled the next one. I became careful about what I shared with the world. My family didn't need to know I was thriving. They had written me off once, and I didn't owe them the satisfaction of my visibility. I posted vague updates online, smiling in selfies, attending networking events, but never revealing the scale of my progress. No one needed to see that I was slowly, deliberately constructing an empire of independence while they remained in the same patterns that had pushed me away. Over time, the life I imagined became real. I moved into a larger apartment, filled it with art I loved, invested in projects that mattered, and built a career that made me proud. The mug sat on my desk, a silent witness to my late nights, early mornings, and countless setbacks overcome. Every step I took was a testament to what I had endured and what I refused to let go. My worth, my vision, my voice. I realized that success, when hard-won and private, carried a sweetness no one else could taste. I was finally free, and I knew that freedom wasn't just about money or recognition. It was about proving to myself, and only to myself, that I could rise, unshaken, untouchable, and unapologetically alive. I didn't answer the first few calls. I let the messages sit there, unread, for days. But finally, curiosity, or maybe a quiet need for closure, pushed me to pick up. "Emily, it's Mom." My mother's voice trembled over the line, unsteady, unfamiliar. We need to see you." The words made a strange, hollow echo in my chest. My mother, the woman who had once ignored me while my sister tore me down, wanted to see me? And Madison, the girl who had made my life a living nightmare, would be there too. I agreed, casually, as if I had no stake in it. The day they arrived, I met them at my apartment, not the tiny, cramped studio of my past, but a space that reflected the life I had built. Soaring ceilings, polished wood floors, walls adorned with art I loved, sunlight streaming through expansive windows that framed the skyline like a painting. My desk, meticulously organized, held the mug from Grandma, now worn and warm with memories. They stepped inside, eyes widening almost immediately. My mother's hand flew to her chest, and Madison's jaw went slack. They took in the space slowly, like explorers who had stumbled into a world they didn't understand. I let them absorb it, their silence more telling than words could ever be. Then I spoke. Calmly. Clearly. "Welcome to my home." I gestured to the office area. "This is where I built my company. I'm the CEO, I own the majority shares, and last year my net revenue exceeded $1 million. It was as if the words physically knocked them backward. I saw disbelief flash across their faces, then shame, then a strange awe. Madison's lips trembled, and for the first time, she looked small in front of me, powerless, the way I had once felt. I let the silence linger, letting them fully comprehend the truth. "You called me because you needed something," I said softly, not accusatory, just stating fact. "But you didn't see me when I needed you. You didn't care when I cried, when I struggled, when I fought to survive. Now this is me, strong, independent, unbroken." They said nothing. They couldn't. I had become everything they had doubted I could ever be, and nothing in their past arrogance could touch me now. I realized, watching their reactions, the shame, the guilt, the unspoken apologies, that this moment wasn't about revenge. It was about acknowledgement, about showing that neglect and cruelty could not define me, and that resilience, hard work, and self-belief could. Finally, Madison spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know." I smiled gently, letting her hang on the words that were too late. "Now you do." I watched them closely, seeing their shame, their hesitation, the tiny flicker of recognition that maybe, just maybe, they had treated me wrong. But I wasn't here to punish. I was here to set boundaries. For the first time in my life, I held the power, and I intended to use it wisely. I can help, I said, voice steady, but on my terms. Things have to change if you want to be part of my life moving forward. My mother's eyes filled with tears, her hands clasped nervously. Anything, Emily. Please. First, I said, meeting her gaze, you must acknowledge the past honestly. Not excuses, not half-truths. Recognize the pain you caused. Only then can we move forward. Madison shifted uncomfortably. I didn't soften. You need to stop belittling people, especially family. You thrived by making me feel small, and I won't tolerate that again. You have to find your own path and respect others along the way. I could see the weight of my words settle over them. It wasn't easy to hear, but it had to be said. If you truly want to reconnect with me, I continued, you must also commit to pursuing your own growth. Stop expecting me to fix things for you. Build your life, face your struggles, and stop holding others back with your toxicity. I let that hang in the air, my tone firm but not cruel. Compassion didn't mean compromise. I had spent years bending, hiding, and excusing others' behavior, and I would never do that again. There was a pause, a collective intake of breath. I watched them digest it, seeing that realization dawn. Their old ways would not work on me anymore. I smiled softly, letting warmth seep into my words. I care about you, and I want us to have a relationship. But it has to be real, equal, and respectful. You'll have to meet me halfway. Their eyes met mine, vulnerability surfacing, and I felt a quiet sense of triumph, not over them, but for myself. For the first time, I wasn't pleading for recognition, I wasn't waiting for validation. I had built my world, my rules, and my voice. And now, anyone who wanted in had to earn their place in it. For the first time in my life, I felt completely untouchable, not because I had power over them, but because I had power over myself. And that was the freedom I had chased all those years ago when I packed my bag and walked out the door. Weeks passed after that meeting, and slowly, I began to see changes. My mother started attending therapy, taking steps to understand how she had failed me and how she could be better. Madison enrolled in a program to build her career and learn respect for others, small acts of growth that made me quietly proud. They weren't perfect, but they were trying, and that was enough. I sat in my office one evening, the city lights twinkling like tiny promises, and looked at the chipped mug from Grandma. It had traveled with me through every hardship, every doubt, every sleepless night, and now it sat on my desk, a reminder of resilience. I ran my fingers over the worn edges and smiled, thinking of her words. Don't let anyone's cruelty define your worth. Build your world, brick by brick. I had done that. I had built it. It wasn't just the apartment, the career, or the bank account. It was the life I had crafted for myself, one where I could breathe without fear of judgment or rejection. I had learned that love for oneself, respect for one's journey, and courage to face the past were the greatest victories. Occasionally, my family would call, asking advice or sharing small wins of their own. I listened, sometimes offering guidance, sometimes simply observing. The power dynamics had shifted, but I didn't relish control. I relished freedom. The freedom to choose how I engaged, the freedom to protect my peace, the freedom to love without compromise. And as I looked out over the skyline, my heart steady, my thoughts clear, I whispered to myself, a line I would carry forever. I left the shadows of their doubt behind, and in the light of my own strength, I finally belonged to myself. It was more than closure. It was victory. It was grace. And it was mine.